I don't think anybody asks to be anxious, nor does anybody want to be in a very negative mindset. And we tend to come down quite harshly on ourselves when we find ourselves in a very negative place, or when we find ourselves struggling with anxiety. And I think this whole social paradigm of ongoing positivity isn't exactly beneficial when it comes to treating our anxiety and any negative emotions with the compassion that they deserve and require. I mean, we hear all about positive vibes only and the importance of keeping a smile on your face, and yet the reality is oftentimes this judgment of our negativity, this judgment of our struggle, actually exacerbates the problem as opposed to alleviating it. And I suppose when we find ourselves struggling with anxiety, or when we find ourselves in a very negative mindset, recognizing that that is our default perspective, that is our biological predisposition, which has been put in place in order to enhance our chance of survival on the planet, is the first step towards recognizing that it doesn't necessarily mean that there is something inherently wrong with our character, nor is it an active choice that we're making. That being said, we need to be very aware of where our mind has a tendency to go, and that's why practicing self-awareness is so important in order to be able to notice ourselves moving into a more negative or anxious mindset, and being able to bring ourselves back in a very compassionate, understanding and forgiving way. And I love the concept that Tara Brach uses, and she uses the word rain to describe, first of all, recognizing when we have moved into thoughts that are high anxiety or thoughts that are extremely negative in a very compassionate way. Accept the fact that we are thinking like that. Accept our anxiety. Accept it as an inevitable part of being human. And then investigate it, because again, oftentimes the thoughts that we experience are stories that we have constructed based on our conditioning, based on our past experiences, particularly if we have experienced any significant level of trauma in our formative years. And then I suppose non-identification, so basically recognizing that our thoughts, our anxiety, our feelings are not the entirety of who we are, and if we can kind of detach a little bit from how we feel and how we think, then we can recognize that all of these things are transient. And I suppose one of the basic Buddhist concepts is that of impermanence. So basically what that entails is just saying that good things don't last forever, bad things don't last forever either. Now, when it comes to good things, that isn't particularly good news, but when it comes to bad things, then that is particularly helpful, because it just allows us to understand that whatever is happening for us isn't going to be forever. It is just this particular moment in time. It may not be gone by the end of the week, however, it will dissipate at some stage. And I suppose the more we can accept the fact that whatever it is will pass at some stage, the more we can sit with our pain. Because again, when we resist our pain, when we fight against it, whether it be physical, mental or emotional pain, then it tends to become more salient. We tend to be very aware of it. Whereas if we can find compassion for our pain, if we can try to soften either at a somatic level, a mental level or an emotional level, opening our hearts to whatever our experience genuinely and authentically is, then we tend to transcend whatever the experience is that little bit more peacefully. And it's not that it doesn't hurt, however, it does alleviate the amount of suffering that we experience, because again, it's a Buddhist concept, that of the second arrow. We're feeling bad, we're hurting in some way, and then we're beating ourselves up and resisting what is actually happening, instead of just being with it and allowing it and being kind with it and walking ourselves through it. And I suppose we need to recognize as well that any of the thoughts or emotions that we have aren't personal. They're not a reflection of who we are. They do not define us. And it's oftentimes very difficult, as I said, not to become very attached to our thoughts, because again, we believe them to be very true. They feel like reality, except that they're not. And then sometimes when we realize that they're a construct that we have manifested in our own mind, we can feel like as if somehow whatever is happening, whatever predicament is going on in our lives is somehow our fault. But our mind just does what it bloody well wants. And I mean, the more we can recognize it, the more we can take a step back and kind of laugh at it. It's not personal. I mean, we have just this natural inclination towards bullshit and negativity and sadness and jealousy and comparison and envy, except all of these things do not, I suppose, cultivate a really beneficial life. So we have to recognize that our mind is doing it. We have to forgive ourselves, and then we have to find another way to either divert our attention or our thoughts or our energies, or find a way to forgive ourselves for how it is that we think or what it is that we think about. Because again, we tend to be very judgmental, both to ourselves and to other people. And the more we can recognize that everybody has fucked up thoughts, everybody has fucked up feelings, everybody feels all of these negative things. I mean, even people who are studying meditation and loving compassion for a lifetime still have the same human inclinations as you and I. And the more we can see that kind of human element to how it is that we feel and how it is that we think, the more likely we are to take it a little less seriously. And I mean, levity is so important when it comes to looking after ourselves and developing a spiritual practice. You know, you have to kind of sometimes take a step back and realize that you're not going to live forever. And, you know, on your deathbed, nobody's going to give a shit whether you said this or thought that, or, you know, what you looked like on your Instagram. So kind of having a little bit of perspective and taking things in context is really important. And, you know, just recognizing that your practice is a lifetime. This isn't going to be something that you practice once off and all of a sudden you're going to recognize, you know, kind of the impermanence and how impersonal your thoughts are, and you'll be in a continuous state of equanimity and zen. It just doesn't go like that. This is a practice that goes on and on and on, and it's about every day recognizing your thoughts wherever possible, recognizing how you're feeling, trying to treat everything with as much compassion as possible, and then trying to divert your attention to others so that you're not always caught up in this self-centered, selfish mindset all of the time. That's me, what do I look like, what's happening for me right now, what am I feeling, how is it affecting me, so that you can recognize that all of that stuff is going to go on, all of that chatter is going to be there, but you do not have to engage with it. You do not have to be consumed by it. You can move forward and say, okay, I see you, I hear you, but you know what, I'm going to do what I need to do right now to be a decent person, both to myself and to others. If you would like to work a little bit on self-awareness and self-acceptance, get in touch with me on the website. It's fundamentals.ie.